After my husband's funeral, I never told his family about the Lakeside house and money he left me. Welcome to Her Hidden Heart.
There's a brass key on a plain steel ring sitting in a ceramic bowl on my nightstand. It's been there for 14 days. I haven't picked it up. I haven't moved it. Every morning I wake up, and that key is the first thing I see. Right next to the lamp Nolan bought at a yard sale in Quakertown because the shade had a dent and the guy knocked $3 off. The key opens a cabin near Hawley, Pennsylvania. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, sits on a 1/4 acre off Tinkwig Road, about a 10-minute drive from Lake Wallenpaupack. Nolan bought it 18 months ago for $167,500. He put it in my name, only my name. I found out about it 2 days after his funeral. I was going through his desk, not looking for anything, just touching his things, and I pulled open the bottom drawer. Inside was a fireproof lockbox. Inside the lockbox was the deed, a stack of Vanguard brokerage statements showing $315,700, and a note in Nolan's handwriting on a piece of yellow legal paper. I guess I should give you the whole background, but honestly, I don't even know where the beginning is. Let me try. My phone rang on a Thursday. Tammy, she works in the dental office across the parking lot from my building. She called during her lunch break. "Marissa, you gotta eat something. I'm bringing you soup whether you like it or not." That's Tammy. She doesn't ask permission to care about you. I've been back at work for 3 days. I do billing for a gastroenterology practice in Coopersburg. Insurance codes, claim disputes, the kind of work where you stare at numbers until your eyes cross. It was good, actually. Numbers don't ask you how you're holding up. Numbers don't tilt their head to the side and say, "How are you, really?" Nolan died of a pulmonary embolism on a Tuesday morning. He was 37. He was a fleet coordinator for a regional trucking company out of Bethlehem. Managed routes, schedules, driver assignments. He was organized, methodical. The kind of man who labeled the circuit breakers in the basement with a label maker and color-coded tabs. That part matters, because when I found that lockbox, I understood immediately. Nolan planned for this, not his death. Nobody plans for a blood clot at 37, but he planned for me. He planned for the possibility that something might happen, and he wanted me covered. The note said, "If something happens to me, everything in this box is yours. Don't let anyone take it." I read that sentence 4 times. Then I closed the box and put it back in the drawer. Dale called that Friday. Nolan's older brother, 43, licensed commercial real estate agent out of Allentown. The kind of man who wears a Bluetooth earpiece to a funeral reception. He said he wanted to come by and help sort out some paperwork. Family stuff, estate stuff. He said it casually, like he was offering to mow the lawn. I said sure, because he was Nolan's brother, because I was 34 years old and my husband had been in the ground for 2 weeks, and I didn't have the energy to question why anyone wanted to help. Dale sat at my kitchen table for an hour and a half. He drank 2 cups of coffee and asked me 11 questions. I counted, because that's what I do. I count things. Occupational hazard. Most of the questions were about Nolan's finances. Did he have life insurance through work? What was the mortgage balance? Did I know about any other accounts? Any investments? Any property? I told him about the life insurance. $45,000 through his employer, standard policy. I told him the mortgage was current, and I stopped there. I didn't mention the cabin. I didn't mention the Vanguard account. Not because I was being strategic. Not yet. Those things were mine. Nolan left them for me. And something about the way Dale leaned forward when he asked about other accounts, something about the angle of his body, the speed of his follow-up question, made my stomach tighten. It was small, barely a feeling at all. I filed it away and moved on. That was my first mistake. Not because I should have told him, because I should have paid more attention to why I didn't. 3 weeks after the funeral, Nolan's family started showing up in shifts. Phyllis came first. That's Nolan's mother, 68. Widowed herself 8 years ago. The kind of woman who brings a casserole and then stays until you wish you'd never answered the door. She showed up on a Monday with a foil-covered dish of baked ziti and a Ziploc bag full of sympathy cards she'd collected from her church friends. "I thought you'd want to read them, sweetheart." I thanked her. She sat down. 3 hours later, she was still there, reorganizing my spice cabinet. Alphabetically, without asking. I found the paprika between the oregano and the pepper and almost called the police. Phyllis has a way of helping that doesn't feel like helping. It feels like inventory. She opens a drawer, pauses, looks at what's inside, then closes it carefully, like she's making a mental note. I watched her do this with the junk drawer, the hall closet, and the cabinet above the refrigerator where Nolan kept his grandfather's things. That's where the watch was. An Omega Seamaster Professional, circa 1971. Nolan's grandfather, on his father's side, not Phyllis's, wore it every day for 30 years. It wasn't flashy, but it was worth about $9,400, and Nolan loved that watch more than most things in this house. Janine came next. Nolan's sister, 39, married to a flooring installer named Greg. Janine called on a Wednesday and said she wanted to help organize Nolan's closet and the garage. She said it sweetly, like she was doing me a favor I hadn't asked for. I let her in because I was too tired to say no. She spent 4 hours going through boxes, folding shirts, sorting tools into piles. She filled 2 garbage bags with donations and asked if I wanted to check them before she loaded them into her car. I glanced through one bag, old work shirts, some boots with the soles coming apart, a broken flashlight. I waved her off. The next morning, I went to Nolan's dresser to get his grandfather's watch. I'd been wearing it sometimes, just holding it really, feeling the weight of it on my wrist. The drawer was empty. I called Janine. Hey, did you happen to see an Omega watch in Nolan's dresser? Silver, older model, leather band? Pause. Honey, I don't remember seeing it. Maybe Nolan moved it somewhere? It was in the top drawer. I saw it last week. I really didn't touch the dresser, Marissa. Maybe check the garage? I checked the garage. I checked every drawer, every shelf, every box Janine had touched. Nothing. The watch was gone. But I told myself, maybe she was right. Maybe Nolan had moved it. Maybe I was confused. Grief does that. Grief rearranges your memory like someone shuffling a deck of cards and handing it back to you. Meanwhile, Dale sent a group text to me, Phyllis, and Janine. We should probably sit down soon and talk about Nolan's estate. There are some financial things that need to be sorted out. Just practical stuff, practical stuff. That phrase sat in my chest like a stone. And then, a small thing, but it stuck. I came home from work on a Friday and found 3 pieces of mail on my kitchen counter that hadn't been there when I left. One was a phone bill, one was a credit card statement, and one was a letter from the county assessor's office, the kind that gives you an updated property tax valuation. Dale had been in the house while I was at work. Phyllis had a spare key. Nolan gave it to her years ago for emergencies. Dale must have borrowed it, and he'd collected my mail. I texted him, "Hey, were you at the house today? Some of my mail was moved." He wrote back, "Oh yeah, sorry, I stopped by to check on the furnace filter. Mom asked me to. Must have grabbed the mail by accident." By accident. 3 specific pieces of mail moved from the mailbox to the kitchen counter. That's a very organized accident. They lost a son, a brother. I kept telling myself, this is just how grief looks on some people. Some people grieve with food. Some people grieve with projects. Maybe Dale grieves with spreadsheets and furnace filters. I almost believed it. 5 weeks after the funeral. The temperature had dropped and the trees along Birch Hollow Lane were mostly bare. I came home from work on a Tuesday to find a white pickup truck in my driveway and a man I'd never seen standing on my front porch with a clipboard. Dale was with him. "Hey, Marissa, this is Kevin, a buddy of mine. I asked him to take a look at the roof. You've got some shingles that are curling, and I want to make sure you're not looking at a leak situation this winter." Kevin didn't look like a roofer. Kevin had a laser measurer on his belt and was wearing clean khakis. Roofers don't wear clean khakis. I let them in because I didn't know how to say "get out of my house" to my dead husband's brother 5 weeks after the funeral. That's the trap, isn't it? Grief gives certain people a VIP pass, and if you revoke it, suddenly you're the heartless one. Kevin spent 40 minutes inside. He measured the living room. He opened the furnace closet. He checked the electrical panel and wrote down the amperage. He looked at the water heater and asked me when it was installed. He spent exactly 0 minutes on the roof. This has nothing to do with the story, but Nolan made the best French toast you've ever had in your life. Thick-cut brioche, real vanilla extract, not the imitation stuff, a little bit of cinnamon and a pinch of cardamom. I keep finding his spatula in the drawer, the silicone one with the blue handle. Every time I see it, it wrecks me for about 10 minutes. Well, okay, back to the family. My neighbor, Mrs. Kasperzak, she's 74, lives in the yellow house with the flagpole. She caught me checking the mail 2 days later. "Marissa, honey, I saw your brother-in-law walking your property line on Tuesday with a tape measure. He was out there for 20 minutes. I thought you should know." I stared at her. He told me he was checking the roof. Mrs. Kasperzak looked at me the way my grandmother used to look at me when I said something naive. She didn't say anything else. She didn't need to. I called Dale that evening. I tried to keep my voice level. What was Kevin actually doing at my house? He didn't look at the roof, Dale. Dale laughed. Actually laughed. He looked at everything, Riss. The roof, the structure, the systems, just making sure the house is in good shape. For your sake. You're a single homeowner now. You need to know what you're dealing with. For my sake. Everything they did was for my sake. Then Phyllis called. And this is where a new word entered my vocabulary. The family loan. Sweetheart, I don't know if Nolan ever told you, but when you two bought the house back in 2017, Dale and I gave Nolan $42,000 for the down payment. We never asked for it back because, well, he was my son. But now that he's gone, and the house is... Dale and I have been talking, and it would only be fair if we discussed how to handle that. $42,000. She said it like she was reciting a phone number, like she'd practiced. I vaguely remembered Nolan mentioning something about repaying his mother. Checks he wrote over a couple of years, but I couldn't prove it. Not yet. Not from memory. Something about that phone call didn't sit right, but I told myself, Dale is a numbers guy, Phyllis keeps records. Maybe there really was a loan and Nolan just never told me the details. Maybe I was the one who didn't have the full picture. 3 days later, Dale emailed me a summary of the loan. Not an original document, not a signed agreement, not a bank transfer record. A spreadsheet. Something he'd typed up himself with dates and amounts that looked specific enough to seem legitimate, but had no supporting documentation whatsoever. I forwarded the email to Tammy. She called me within 4 minutes. Marissa, you need a lawyer. I don't want to turn this into a war. Honey, it's already a war. You're just the only one not fighting. I stared at that spreadsheet for a long time that night. The columns were neat. The fonts were consistent. It looked professional, but there was no signature from Nolan. No bank records, no promissory note, nothing but Dale's word. And Dale's word, I was starting to realize, was worth exactly what it cost him to type it up. 6 weeks after the funeral, the family shifted gears from helpful to organized. It started with a second email from Dale. This one, CC'd Phyllis and Janine. Subject line, house discussion, moving forward. The body was 3 paragraphs long and included the phrase, the family's financial interest, twice. He wrote it like a business proposal. He even used bullet points. Janine called that same afternoon to check in. We talked for 22 minutes. She asked how I was sleeping. She asked if I'd been eating, and then, like she was reading from a script, she said, you know, Greg and I have been talking, and things are really tight right now. Nolan would have wanted the family taken care of. Not just you, Marissa. All of us. We're all grieving. I let her talk. I counted the word family. She said it 9 times. Phyllis showed up the next day, unannounced. She had a real estate flyer in her purse, a 2-bedroom condo in an over 55 community near Emmaus. She set it on my kitchen table like she was presenting evidence. Just in case you're thinking about downsizing, sweetheart, it's a beautiful little complex, very safe, close to shopping. I'm 34 years old. She brought me a brochure for a retirement community. I smiled. I thanked her. I put the brochure in the recycling bin the second her Buick pulled out of the driveway. That night, I went into Nolan's office and opened the lockbox again. The deed, the Vanguard statements, Nolan's letter, and that brass key, still sitting in the ceramic bowl on my nightstand, where it had been for weeks. I looked at it differently now. It wasn't just a key to a cabin. It was a way out. I started going through his file cabinet. 3rd drawer, behind the tax returns. I found a folder labeled Family in Nolan's handwriting. Inside, 5 canceled checks, all written to Phyllis Croft. 3 were right there in the folder. $8,000 in March 2018, $10,000 in September 2018, $8,000 in April 2019. That's $26,000, not the full 42, but it was something. I photographed each check with my phone, front and back, time-stamped. That weekend, I drove to the cabin for the first time. An hour and 40 minutes on Route 33 to the Turnpike extension, then north through the Poconos. I brought the lockbox, 2 suitcases, and the photo albums from the hall closet. Just the things I couldn't afford to lose, because by that point, something in me already knew. Whatever was coming next, I didn't want my most important things sitting in a house where Dale had a spare key. The next morning was a Saturday. I was standing in the kitchen making coffee when I heard a car door. Then 2 more. Dale, Janine, and Janine's husband Greg walked up the front path like they were arriving for a barbecue. Greg was wearing Nolan's grandfather's watch, the Omega Seamaster, the 1971 model with the brushed steel case and the original crown on Greg's wrist. He wasn't hiding it. He was wearing it like it was his, like it had always been his, like it was nothing. My vision narrowed, literally. The edges of the room went soft and the center went sharp, and the only thing I could see clearly was that watch on a wrist that had no right to wear it. I didn't say a word. I poured 3 extra cups of coffee and sat down at the table. Was I being paranoid? Maybe they did loan him the money and he never paid it back. Maybe Janine really didn't take the watch. Maybe Dale really was just looking out for me. Maybe I was a grieving widow turning her husband's family into villains because I needed someone to blame. I sat with that thought for about 30 seconds, and then I looked at Greg's wrist again, and I stopped wondering. All right, hold on. Before I keep going, I want to say something real quick. If you've been listening this far, hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. I read every single one of them, and honestly, your comments get me through my week. I mean that. Thank you. Okay, back to this. Dale brought a woman to my house on a Saturday morning. No warning, no phone call. Just his silver Lexus pulling into the driveway at 9:15, and a woman I'd never seen climbing out of the passenger side with a leather portfolio and a digital camera. She was already taking pictures of the front of the house before I opened the door. Marissa, this is Christine. She's a colleague from my office. I just wanted her to get a fresh set of eyes on the place. Christine smiled at me with the kind of professional warmth that real estate agents practice in a mirror. She was already looking past me into the foyer, scanning the crown molding, the hardwood floors, the staircase. I watched her eyes move like she was calculating square footage in real time. Dale walked through my house like he owned it. He pointed at the kitchen. Granite counters, updated in 2019. He pointed at the back door. New slider, double pane. He opened the basement door and told Christine the foundation was poured concrete. No cracks. He knew details about my house that I didn't even know. I stood in the hallway and watched this happen. My arms were crossed. My jaw was locked so tight I could feel my molars grinding. And then Dale turned to me. He put his hand on the kitchen counter, the granite counter that Nolan and I picked out at a warehouse in Nazareth after spending 4 Saturdays comparing samples, and he said, "We're selling your house." Not "we should talk about selling." Not "have you considered." Not "what do you think." He said it the way you'd tell a renter that the lease is up, like the decision was made and I was being notified. I smiled. I couldn't help it. Not because anything was funny, because I'd spent the past week loading my car with photo albums, the lockbox, my grandmother's crystal, and everything else that mattered, and driving it all to a cabin that Dale didn't know existed. He was standing in my kitchen, telling me he was taking my house, and half of what I cared about was already gone. Dale saw the smile. He didn't understand it. He kept talking. He laid it out like a pitch deck. The family loaned Nolan $42,000 for the down payment. Nolan never repaid it. The family has a financial interest in the property. The easiest solution for everyone is to sell the house, repay the family's stake, and divide the remaining equity. He had a listing agreement in Christine's portfolio. 2 signatures required, but he said it like mine was a formality. I need a second. This part, okay, I'm fine. It's just, he said it in my kitchen. Standing next to the refrigerator, Nolan and I picked out together at a scratch and dent sale in Hellertown. That's the part that got me. Not the words, the location. He stood in the middle of my life and told me it was his to sell. Christine leaned toward Dale on the way out and said something she thought I couldn't hear, but I was standing 6 feet away, and I have excellent hearing, she said. The comparable is closer to $290. We could list at $305, $305,000. That's what they thought my home was worth. That's what they planned to take. I didn't sign. I said I needed time to think. Dale's face changed. The salesman's smile dropped, and what was underneath was harder, colder, and a lot less patient. Don't wait too long, Marissa. The market shifts. They left. I locked the front door, the back door, and the garage. Then I sat on the kitchen floor, right there on the tile, next to the refrigerator, and I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, and I felt something click into place behind my eyes. This wasn't grief. It was never grief. Dale had been running a play since the day of the funeral, the helpful visits, the roof inspector who wasn't a roofer, The spreadsheet with no documentation, Phyllis's retirement condo brochure, Janine's kitchen table sympathy. Every move was a setup. Every kindness was a measurement. And that watch on Greg's wrist, that wasn't forgetfulness. That was a family that had already divided up my husband's life and was coming back for the house. I pulled out my phone and texted Tammy 2 words. "You're right." She wrote back in 11 seconds. "I have an attorney's name. Call him Monday." Mr. Kirchner's office was on the 2nd floor of a converted row house on Broad Street in Bethlehem. The carpet was brown. The waiting room had those padded chairs with the wooden armrests that every lawyer's office in Pennsylvania seems to buy from the same catalog. Tammy's uncle had used him for his own divorce and said the man was thorough and didn't waste your time. He didn't. I sat across from him with a folder I'd put together over the weekend, the deed to the house, Nolan's death certificate, Dale's email with the loan spreadsheet, the 3 canceled checks I'd found so far. Mr. Kirchner read everything in silence, made 2 notes on a yellow pad, and then looked up. "The house is yours. Joint tenancy with right of survivorship. Your husband died. Ownership passed to you automatically. Full stop. What about the loan? Even if they did loan your husband $42,000 and he never repaid a cent, which you have evidence he did, it's an unsecured personal debt. They can't put a lien on your property for it. They can't force a sale. They have no legal claim to your home. Your brother-in-law is either very confused about property law or he's counting on you being confused about it." I knew which one it was. Dale wasn't confused about anything. I went back to Nolan's office that night with a flashlight and a level of focus I hadn't felt in 6 weeks. I pulled every file from the cabinet, every envelope, every scrap of paper, and in a folder, wedged behind the 2019 tax return, I found the last 2 canceled checks. $8,000 dated June 2019, $8,000 dated November 2020. Both payable to Phyllis Croft, both endorsed and deposited. Total, $42,000. Loan repaid in full, every penny. I photographed them, front and back, saved the originals in the lockbox, and then I picked up the brass key. For real this time. Not as a thought, not as an idea. I held it in my hand and I felt the teeth against my palm, and I made a decision. Every carload after work, everything that mattered. The cabin was mine, it was safe, and nobody in the Croft family knew it existed. Then I made a mistake. Phyllis called me on a Thursday evening. She was crying, or doing that thing she does that sounds like crying but never produces actual tears. She was talking about Nolan, about how much she missed him, about how the family was falling apart. And I said, without thinking, because I was tired and my guard was down, "I talked to someone about the house, Phyllis. It's going to be fine." I meant the attorney. She heard something else entirely. Within 2 hours, Dale called. His voice was tight. "I hear you've been talking to lawyers." I didn't confirm or deny. I said I was handling things. Handling things. He repeated it like I'd said something offensive. "Marissa, we're trying to do this the family way. You bring lawyers into it and this gets ugly." It was already ugly. He just didn't like that I'd noticed. The next day, Friday, I came home from work and the garage had a new lock. A shiny brass deadbolt that I did not buy and did not authorize. I stood there staring at it with my car keys in my hand. I called Dale. "Did you change my garage lock?" "Yeah, for security. Mom was worried. You're not home a lot these days." The man changed my lock. My lock. On my garage. On a house he has no legal claim to. Using a key he should never have had in the first place. I stood in my own driveway looking at that shiny new deadbolt and thought, "You know what, Dale? That's the most productive thing you've done in your life. Too bad it's going to cost you everything." Mrs. Kasperzak caught me the following Tuesday. She was pulling weeds in her front bed. At 74, that woman has more energy than I do. And she waved me over. "Marissa, I saw 2 people going through your house on Monday afternoon. A man and a woman. Your brother-in-law let them in. He was showing my house to buyers while I was at work." I thanked Mrs. Kasperzak. I went inside. I locked every door. I changed the front door lock myself. Tammy came over with a drill and a Schlage deadbolt kit from the hardware store. And we did it in 40 minutes. Then I called Mr. Kirchner and told him everything. "I need you to make this stop." Mr. Kirchner sent the letter on a Wednesday. Certified mail, return receipt requested, addressed to Dale Croft at his office on Hamilton Street in Allentown. Cease and desist. Stop entering the property. Stop representing yourself as having authority over the estate. Stop interfering with the property rights of the legal and sole owner. The letter included a copy of the deed showing full ownership had passed to me upon Nolan's death. It included a citation of the relevant Pennsylvania statute, and it included one sentence that Mr. Kirchner added at my request. Any further unauthorized entry will be reported as trespassing. Dale called me 14 minutes after the letter was delivered. I know because I was watching the tracking number. Marissa, what are you doing? I'm protecting my property. This is insane. You're tearing this family apart. Dale, you brought a real estate agent into my home without my consent and told me you were selling it. You changed my locks. You entered the house while I was at work and showed it to strangers. I think we're past the point of family discussions. He went quiet, and then the play I'd been expecting. Nolan would be ashamed of you. Now I know what some of you are thinking. Why didn't she just give them something to make it stop? Write a check for $42,000, call it a day, keep the peace. And honestly, I thought about it for about 3 seconds. Then I remembered that the loan was already repaid, every cent, and that Dale knew it, or should have known it if Phyllis hadn't conveniently forgotten to mention it. I sent Dale one text message. Attached, photographs of all 5 canceled checks. $8,000, $10,000, $8,000, $8,000, $8,000. March 2018 through November 2020. $42,000. Repaid in full. I captioned it. The loan was repaid by November 2020. Please stop contacting me about the house. 2 days of silence. I thought it was over. I actually told Tammy, I think he got the message. She said, don't celebrate yet. She was right. Dale filed a fraudulent claim of lien against my property with the Lehigh County Recorder of Deeds. He claimed the $42,000 as an unpaid debt attached to the property. He filed it on a Monday. I found out on a Wednesday when Mr. Kirchner called me at work. We have a problem. The lien clouded the title. It meant I couldn't sell the house, couldn't refinance, couldn't do anything with it until the lien was resolved. I was frozen. Everything I'd been planning, listing the house on my terms, with my own agent, taking the proceeds and starting fresh at the cabin, all of it stopped. I didn't sleep for 4 days. I ate cereal standing at the kitchen counter at 1 in the morning, staring at the wall. I drove to work and sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes before I could make myself go inside. I called Tammy and said the words I'd been avoiding. Maybe I should just give them the money. Maybe it's not worth this. Tammy said, Marissa Croft, you are not giving $42,000 to people who stole your husband's watch off his dresser. Call your lawyer. Mr. Kirchner filed an emergency petition to dissolve the lien. He attached all 5 canceled checks. He attached the original deed. He attached Dale's own email spreadsheet, which, as Mr. Kirchner pointed out, contained no original documentation, no signatures, and no evidence of any remaining debt. The spreadsheet Dale created to pressure me became evidence of his own bad faith. 9 days. It took 9 days to dissolve the lien. 9 days of nothing. Just waiting and brushing my teeth at night wondering if I'd made a mistake by fighting instead of folding. On day 10, the county recorder's office dissolved the lien. And on day 11, I learned what Dale hadn't told anyone. He'd taken out a personal loan, $38,000 from Lehigh Valley Federal Credit Union, secured against his expected share from the sale of my house, a house he had no legal claim to, a sale that was never going to happen. He'd already spent part of it, a down payment on a boat of all things, according to his ex-girlfriend, who Tammy happened to know from her gym. The man sells strip mall units in Allentown. He thought he could flip his dead brother's widow out of her home, take a cut, and buy a boat. In what world? But it gets worse for Dale, because filing a fraudulent lien in Pennsylvania is not a civil inconvenience. The county referred the filing for review. His real estate license, the thing that pays his mortgage, funds his Lexus, keeps his Bluetooth earpiece charged, was now under investigation by the state licensing board. I met Dale and Phyllis at the house one final time. I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I set a folder on the kitchen table, the same table where Dale had first asked me about Nolan's finances 6 weeks earlier. Inside the folder, the deed, the 5 canceled checks, the cease and desist, and the county's notice of referral regarding the fraudulent lien investigation. Dale opened it, read the first page, stopped. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. I looked at Phyllis. She was sitting very still, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes fixed on the folder like it might catch fire. "You lost a son," I said. "I lost my husband, but you didn't lose this house, because it was never yours." Phyllis didn't answer. Dale closed the folder and set it down carefully, like it was made of something fragile. He stood up, buttoned his jacket, and walked out the front door without looking at me. Phyllis followed him. She stopped at the door, turned halfway, and for a second I thought she was going to say something. An apology, an excuse, anything. She closed the door behind her. I heard the Lexus start. I heard the tires on the gravel. And then I heard nothing at all. The cabin smells like pine sap and lake water, not because I bought a candle, because that's what it actually smells like. The windows face east, and in the mornings, the light comes off Wallenpaupack in this flat white sheet that fills the whole kitchen before I've even finished my coffee. I hung the brass key on a hook by the front door, the same key that sat in a ceramic bowl on my nightstand for weeks while I was too grief-blind to see what was happening around me. It's not in a bowl anymore. It's exactly where it belongs. Nolan's letter is framed on the mantel. His block handwriting fills the yellow legal paper edge to edge. The Coopersburg house went on the market last Thursday. My agent, my listing, my terms. Dale's loan is still outstanding. $38,000 against a house sale that will never exist. His real estate license review is still pending. I don't know how that ends. I don't need to. The last box I unpacked was the one with Nolan's spatula, the blue silicone one. I put it in the second drawer, left of the stove, right where he'd want it. You think this story was something? The next one on your screen might be even crazier. Click it. I promise you won't regret it.